So once again, it looks like the Miami Heat are running it back. And a lot of Heat fans are mad. They think the front office is sleeping. They think that maybe they're overvaluing their own assets. But I don't think that's the truth. I think other franchises just don't want what we have. I don't think they want Tyler Hero on his current contract. And you can argue, well, that's the front office fault also for wasting first-round picks, wasting second-round picks, signing Tyler Hero to this massive deal. And I would agree with you, that is the front office fault. But I think they're trying to move on from those guys, and other teams just don't want them. Now, I do have a full deep dive, a pretty well-researched video looking into the Heat's assets and whether I actually think they are bad contracts. That video will be out within the next week. But until then, I wanted to react to this Bleacher Report article, which came out today, titled Ranking Every NBA Team by Current Trade Assets. This one is from our boy Andy Bailey, the Jit from Modern Family. He's back, and he usually does some pretty good articles. I did skim through it, so I know where the Heat are at, but let's get into it today. And I should specify, it shows everyone's first-round picks, whether they're immediately tradable or not, because teams can do all kind of finicky backdoor stuff where they send a swap and get a pick to return to unlock another year pick and all kind of stuff. Also, there is no set definition for, who is a tradable asset. I'd imagine he's mostly going to have younger players, but we'll see when we get into it. And number 30 is the Milwaukee Bucks, which I love to see because the last thing I need is another top contender in the East swinging a home run trade for someone. And he has their only assets as one first-round pick, Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, and AJ Johnson. I will say from this group, I would love Bobby Portis on the Heat. He provides that Heat culture, tenacity that I think would fit great here. He's the type of player that you hate when he's on another team, but you love him when he was on your team. So I would like Bobby Portis here, just as a side note. Not Brook Lopez, though. A lot of Heat fans are clamoring for that. Yes, he's big, but he doesn't rebound, and that's what the Heat need help with. So what's the point in that regard? But obviously, the Bucks won their championship, so they can live having the worst assets in the league. I don't think they're complaining. Next, he has the Los Angeles Clippers, who have 2 firsts, and he's counting James Harden here, Norman Powell, and Terrence Mann, who I do think is a nice young player. It'll be curious to see what direction the Clippers go with because they're kind of looking like they're still trying to go win now, even though we all know that's not really possible at this point. They lost a couple key pieces, Paul George, Russell Westbrook. Not that I think Paul George was that great anyways. Dude is a habitual playoff choker, but with really relying on Kawhi and an older James Harden, I don't think that's going to work well for them. They should want to be in rebuild mode, and unfortunately, they don't have a lot of assets right now to do so. The Boston Celtics here, another team that has their chip, so they could care less about being this low. They do have a good amount of picks here, though. I know a lot of that is because when they acquired Porzingis, they also got 2 first-round picks, which is crazy. That's how negative an asset Porzingis was because of the injury history. And I know he's injured now, but still, Celtics were able to use, I think, one of those picks to get Drew Holiday. So that's kind of how they got this super team that they have now through great asset management. And also Joe Cronin being petty as hell and decided to send Drew Holiday to Boston just to spite Miami. But anyways, the young players that has listed here is Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, and Baylor Shireman was their first-round pick, 30th in the overall in his previous draft. I like him a lot. Keep a name out for him. He had a pretty nice summer league, and I think he's going to be a very good player as well. Then they got the Denver Nuggets, another team has a championship. I don't think they care. They have a couple of first-round picks along with Peyton Watson, Julian Strawther, and Christian Brown, who Peyton Watson, I remember they were saying last year he was going to be like the Bruce Brown replacement. Like, they don't care that they lost Bruce Brown. It didn't work out that way. He's still a young player with a lot of potential, but he's not as great, or at least didn't make as immediate as an impact as a guy like Christian Brown did. But anyways, we'll move on here to the Dallas Mavericks at 26, who have Derek Lively, of course, Olivia Maxwell Prosper, who had a decent summer league, and Jaden Harvey, who has a lot of potential as well. And they got 3 first-round picks here to show for it as a team that just made the NBA Finals. And that was on the back of a couple young guys, like obviously Luka's still very young, and Derek Lively. Though that team's just going to keep getting way better with their current in-house talents, so they will be scary for years to come. Next, they have the New York Knicks, which interests me because it only shows here they only have 2 first-round picks. I thought they had even more still, but even the fact that they have 2 picks after trading for Anunoby, after trading for Mikal Bridges, that tells you how many picks they had to begin with. I think they had like 7 tradable first-round picks at one point, which is nuts. And that goes all the way back to when they traded Porzingis to Dallas still. But they are noting Julius Randle as a trade asset here. I don't know where he fits in that roster. If you're starting Mikal and Anunoby, is Randall your small ball 5? I think that sounds kind of nasty, as in bad nasty. So maybe they do trade Randall. I have no idea what his trade value is. But they also list Miles McBride, who had a nice season last year, and Bacoma Dadiet, the Frenchman they took in the second round last year. Very versatile wing. Next, they got the 76ers here, who list their notable players as Kelly Oubre, KJ Martin, and Jared McCain. Jared McCain was very hit or miss in the summer league. I feel bad for him because I like him, and I know when he does play bad in the NBA in certain games, the memes are going to be hilarious. They already have been with the dancing. Jared McCain, we need you to hit a bucket. We're down by 1. McCain, just TikTok dancing. I don't know. I think it's funny. I like Jared McCain, though. I think he'll be a good player. And what else do they got there? How many first-round picks? 1, 2, 3, 4. So they got a good amount of first-round picks here to still use, which makes me wonder why they're so low here. I do guess most of these are probably swaps. But either way, that team's trying to win now, and all their cap space is now filled up with Paul George. Gave him a massive bag, which I do think will be a mistake. Next, you got the Phoenix Suns here, who just got Tyus Jones on a minimum, which is ridiculous. But it shows notable players as, wow, they put KD and Booker on here. I'm surprised that my guy Andy Bailey has them so low on this list if he's counting KD and Booker. But obviously, this all relies on how the Suns play going into next year. If they start the season off slow, you get to the trade deadline, and they're barely even in the play-in, then maybe those guys can get moved, and it'll be very interesting if that time comes. Next, you got the Cleveland Cavaliers. Darius Garland, I do think is a potential trade candidate because they don't love the fit with him and Mitchell, and they just resigned Mitchell. Same with Jared Allen. It shows here they don't love the fits with Allen and Evan Mobley, so obviously Allen would be the one to get moved in that case. I would personally like Garland or Jared Allen on the Heat. I think both those guys could fit, depending on what their trade value is, because I wouldn't give up all of our young guys for either one of those, but those are some nice young players. The Minnesota Timberwolves, wow, he's putting Karl Towns as a notable player, along with Jaden McDaniels and Rob Dillingham. 3 very, very nice young players. From a Heat perspective, wow, I'd love Cat on the Heat. Let me just say it. So you're talking about a stretch 5 next to Bam that could rebound the ball? Ooh, I would love that. But, Cat has a reputation of being soft. Jimmy Butler does not like him. I don't think that could ever happen. But Jaden McDaniels would be awesome here. And obviously, Rob Dillingham was just drafted, and they got 3 first as well. So I'm surprised he has the Timberwolves this low because those are some pretty good players. Next at 20, the Indiana Pacers. Miles Turner, they've been talking about trading forever. I can't see a world where they would do that, though. Nesmith was too good last year. I don't think they'd trade him. Maybe Benedict Mathurin, just because they didn't need him with the emergence of Andrew Nembhard and Ben Shepherd. But the Pacers got a good thing going. I would be trying to add, not sell off some of these guys here. The Sacramento Kings has Keegan Murray. I cannot see the Kings trading Keegan Murray at all, unless a whale of all whales becomes available. But it also shows Herter and Trey Lyles. I could see them moving on from both of those guys. Plus, they got several first-round picks here, 2026 through 2030 first. Wow, so they got quite a bit there. The Grizzlies, Marcus Smart, I do think is a trade candidate. Was very hurt last year, didn't play a ton, but it sounds like they might already be willing to move on from him. I could see the Heat looking for him as well because he's a guy that they kind of would want in that Heat culture when you talk about a defensive point of attack guy. Brandon Clark really hasn't been the same since his rookie season. He's kind of fallen out of favor there. And G.G. Jackson, who was hooping in the summer league. I would love that kid, G.G. Jackson. He's going to be a great player, and Memphis would be stupid to trade him unless a whale is available. Again, 17, the Wizards, Kuzma, Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole has the worst contract in the NBA. That should make them worse. And then Malcolm Brogdon could fit on pretty much any contender. But obviously, they have a lot of picks here. So I guess that's why he has them as high as 17. Kuzma's a guy that could get you a lot of talent or a lot of value. A contending team would probably be interested. I think a team like Miami would be interested. Would Washington want a guy like Tyler Hero to play next to Jordan Poole? Probably not. But if they do, I would take Kyle Kuzma. Number 16, the Lakers, who have D'Lo, who has been in trade rumors since he got there. Roy Hachimura, who I like a lot, and Austin Reeves. They got a few first-round picks as well. I wonder what Austin Reeves' value around the league is. Very good player, and I actually think he's on a pretty decent deal for what he gives you. Much less money than Tyler Hero, and he's probably a comparable player. So I do think the Lakers have some pieces here if they wanted to make a swing, if a star was to become available. The Bulls, they're showing Zach LaVine, who seems to be a very negative contract at this point, along with Lonzo Ball, and Nikola Vucevic. These are all looked at as negative assets in the league. Unfortunately, Lonzo was just seen practicing the other day. I think he was cleared for 5s, maybe, if I remember that correctly. He was a good player. You just can't trust those guys with the injuries, him and Levine. And Vucevic just took such a drastic decline in his three-point percentage. He's gotten kind of inefficient. And at $20 million over the next 2 seasons each, he's kind of looked at as a negative contract as well. But these are decent players. If they can, start the season with the Bulls and play well, maybe they could up their trade value a little bit. The Toronto Raptors are next with Bruce Brown, Jakob Poeltl, and Kelly Olynyk. I remember when the Raptors traded for Poeltl again, like a year or two ago. We thought they were going to sell. Instead, they traded a first-round pick to the Spurs to get Poeltl. So I'm like, oh, well, the Raptors might be trying to buy in around Anunoby. No. And then a year later, they sold off Anunoby and they go to rebuild anyway. So why the hell did they waste a first-round pick to get Jakob Poeltl? I don't know. That's one of the most recent cases of bad asset management. But yeah, these guys are fine, and they got a good amount of picks if they want to make a swing for someone, but that team's in rebuild mode, and they should continue to do so. Next, you got the Atlanta Hawks. They are listing Trae Young here, and Jalen Johnson. No, see, they got to pick a direction here, because if you're trying to rebuild, well, then you're going to keep Jalen Johnson and Zachary Ricochet, which is probably what he says in this paragraph. I should read this. Yeah, on the other hand, maybe the young-led Hawks are bigger than Murray-sized star away, so let's say the Hawks start playing well next year, and they feel like they don't need Jalen Johnson and Zachary, whatever. They can trade those guys, but I don't think so. Jalen Johnson's been too good for them, and that team is too far to contention for them to want to buy in. I think the Hawks are more likely to sell off Trae Young and build around Jalen Johnson and Zachary Ricochet than to sell off the young guys to try to win now. I think that would be just stupid. And here we go. The Miami Heat, as notable players, they only have Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, and Jaime Jaquez. Now, I will say first off, I am surprised they have the Heat this high, because all we hear is that the Heat have terrible assets and nobody wants our stuff. And 12 is pretty high. Now, I will say they're excluding Khalil Ware, which probably has a lot of trade value at the moment. They're excluding Pelle Larsson, had a great summer league as well. They're also excluding Nikola Jovic, who wasn't great in the last Olympics game for Serbia versus USA, but we know what he brings to the table. He has through the roof potential. When you talk about a 6'10 guy that can shoot and handle, you don't think that guy has a lot of trade potential? So I do think that's a pretty bad omission here by Andy Bailey. But he does show that we got 2 firsts here. Again, although I think it's only 1 at the moment. And it says, speaking of a team at potential crossroads, the Heat don't have a ton of picks available for win-now trades. So they could maybe make a difference for a game-changing star with Tyler Hero or Jaime Jaquez. Teams would want Jaime Jaquez. I don't think they'd want Tyler Hero. But I'm going to get more into that in my negative assets deep dive that'll be releasing in a couple of days. So stay tuned for that. But overall, 12th isn't bad, I guess. And maybe the Heat even have guys like Kashad Johnson and Isaiah Stevens come in and just ball out. And maybe they can convince a team to take those guys on as well. Who knows? I know those guys are just two-way contracts now, but eventually come January, when their prorated value is less than the second apron, I could see the Heat signing those guys, and who knows, maybe moving them immediately for a star. If not this year, next year in the offseason, who knows? The Heat do have a pretty nice young pipeline right now of young talent. So I think their assets aren't the worst, at least when it comes to players. When it comes to picks, certainly. Seems like a team like the Utah Jazz values picks more than young prospects, which is why we don't have an offer that could blow them away for Lauri Markkanen. But we'll move on here to the Orlando Magic. They have Jonathan Isaac, who finally stayed relatively healthy last year and was great defensively. Cole Anthony Black. That team definitely has a lot of guards. They just signed Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They still got Jalen Suggs. I don't think there's a lot of run for all of those guards there, so maybe they'd be willing to move on from a guy like Cole Anthony or Anthony Black, who just haven't really shown the kind of impact right away that you might have hoped for. Even though at least Anthony Black is still very young, I think he can get much better. But if the Magic decide they want to go all in now, or at least for a better piece, because they almost made it to the second round last year, and they have a young roster with young stars and Banchero and Franz that should get, better on paper, maybe they do want to sell off some of these young guys to improve immediately. Next, the Charlotte Hornets, who have LaMelo Ball, and they do list Grant Williams in their first-round pick this past year to Jean Salon, like a 6'9" French shooter. And this is another weird one. Ever since the Hornets traded for Grant Williams, they've been trying to trade him away, which I don't understand. Or whenever they signed him or traded for him, I don't remember if he came as a free agent, but he's a good player, man. I think he'd fit good on the Heat too. He's kind of like a PJ Tucker light. And I'd like him here. I think he should have some good trade value. And LaMelo Ball played like 30 games last year. He's a great player. I just hope he can stay healthy, and I'll be curious to see what that team can do, because between him and Brandon Miller, they got some nice young talent. They really, really do. Next, you got the Brooklyn Nets, who have a crap load of first-round picks here with Cam Johnson, who is pretty old at this point as far as trade assets go. So I'm not sure how many, how his value is affected because of that. And then a couple of guys we've been hearing about, like Dorian Finney-Smith. And I didn't even remember they got Bojan Bogdanovic back. I guess the Knicks sent him in the Mikal Bridges trade. It's probably how they got him back. Two guys on the Heat that they've been linked to the Heat for a while. I'd like them here. So if the Nets are interested in Tyler Hero and the Heat can get a couple rotation pieces and do a salary dump, I would do it. But obviously the Nets got a lot of first-round picks. Same with the Portland Trailblazers here, of course, although they have a terrible contract in Jeremy Grant and DeAndre Ayton, who nobody seems to want. So, shout out to you, Joe Cronin, for being petty. That's what you get. You get stuck with DeAndre Jordan, who's a bum. DeAndre Ayton, who's a bum. And Anthony Simons, who I do think is pretty good. And it doesn't even list the other guys here, like Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson, who doesn't seem great either. I know he's like 12 years old, so he got a lot of time to improve. So I'm not trying to talk trash about a rookie who's that young. But the Portland Trailblazers certainly don't have the brightest future, although they got a lot of first-round picks here. Good for them. The Pelicans, he does have all the way at 7 because he includes Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum. I don't really like Jordan Hawkins. He seems like an inefficient shot chucker. But that team has to pick a direction. They don't seem to love the pairing of Zion and Brandon Ingram. I know the numbers on court aren't well together, although in theory, I think it should make sense. I know they're both pretty ball dominant, but I feel like Brandon Ingram could kind of be a spot-up shooter guy while you let Zion attack in the paint, but it hasn't worked out well. Obviously, that's another name that's been linked to the Heat, so there's been a lot of smoke around trading Brandon Ingram, so I'd like to believe we see it at some point within the next year, but we'll see how it plays out for them. They certainly got to pick a direction. The Golden State Warriors, who I don't think should be this much higher than the Heat, because yes, Kuminga is a good player. I don't think he's better than Jaime Jaquez, or at least he won't be in 3-4 years. I'm going to stake that claim right now. Obviously, Brandon Pozinski is pretty good, but Andrew Wiggins might have the worst contract in the league, if not Jordan Poole. And they have, this is 25 through 29 first and the 2031 first. I don't think they have that much first. They certainly probably have more than the Heat, but I don't think they have a better young core than Miami. I'll at least say that. So maybe if you value the picks, maybe they have better trade assets, but number 6 in the league, I don't know. Because if the Warriors trade Andrew Wiggins, they're going to have to attach a first to get rid of him. So I'm not sure how I feel about that. Next, you got the Detroit Pistons, who they list Isaiah Stewart, Jaden Ivey, Simone Fontecchio, big stretch 4, who I like a lot. I also like Isaiah Stewart a lot. Jaden Ivey, he's a pretty good perimeter guard defender, can run an offense. The shooting is just too iffy at this point, but I can't see the Pistons wanting to move on from him because they got Cade. They just got Ron Holland. Obviously, those guys can't shoot that well. They signed Malik Beasley, so I don't think there's a clear spot for Jaden Ivey in the rotation. Same with Isaiah Stewart, just because Jalen Duran has been playing so well. Stewart would kind of be like a backup guy, but I think he's better than that. But he wouldn't start over Fontecchio and Duran, I believe. But I like Stewart. He has been able to stretch the floor, can rebound, a little bit undersized for his position, but I would like him in Miami. So the Spurs, they showed Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Chris Paul, and several first-round picks. I thought Keldon Johnson was a good player, a near 20-point-per-game scorer, but the Spurs have kind of been trying to move on from him ever since. Devin Vassell's a very nice shooter. I feel like he fits next to Stephon Castle, who's not as much a shooter. I feel like he fits stretching the floor for Wembanyama to kind of get to his spots. And the Chris Paul's on like a 1-year deal. I don't think they would trade him. They got him to spend the year to train the Spurs young guards and to feed Wemby lobs. They wouldn't trade him, but they got a lot of first-round picks, so I get it. Next, you got the Houston Rockets, which makes complete sense. I could see them maybe wanting to move on from Jalen Green if the fit with Reed Shepherd isn't nice. Jalen Green certainly balled out the second half of last year, but Reed Shepherd came into the Summer League and dominated. Who's going to be the better player? I can't tell you. I know that boy Alperen Sengun is a beast, and I think the Rockets would be stupid to trade him. But if you're counting him as a trade asset, it makes sense why the Rockets are this high. And they obviously have a lot of first-round picks. So there is an avenue for the Rockets to easily acquire a star if one was to become available. So time will tell what happens with them. Secondly, they have the Utah Jazz because they're including Lauri Markkanen, who's on the final year of his deal, $18 million. He's going to be up for some very big max money next offseason. Because of that, I don't know what his trade value is. A lot of times when an expiring contract, the trade value is not as high because teams are scared they're going to walk in free agency. So I do think that's why Markkanen will be with the Jazz for the remainder or for the entire season. John Collins is kind of looked at as a negative asset, so I don't think his value is great, and nobody seems to want Jordan Clarkson. But I guess they got all these damn picks from the Gobert and Donovan Mitchell-Hall, so I'm okay with them being at number 2. Number 1 makes sense with the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have 17 first-round picks. They're out there scouting freaking middle schoolers right now, and they obviously have so much young talent as well. This just lists Hartenstein, who they just signed, along with Lou Dortz and Hustle Williams. Kenny Hustle is his name, Kenrich Williams, who's a very good player. But obviously they got tons of pieces there that can be moved and just a boatload of picks that I can't even begin to fathom how the hell they got so many. Great asset management, that's how. Even, what is that ad? That scared the crap out of me. Anyways, even when they acquired Alex Caruso, they didn't even give up a first-round pick, which is insane. But anyways, that's all I got to say for this video. So let me know what y'all think down below. Do you think Andy Bailey was cooking? Do you think there's any bad omissions, or who would you switch on this list? I'll be sure to read everyone's comment because I'm very curious to hear what y'all think. Make sure to like the video and subscribe because all the support is greatly appreciated. And I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace out.
Look, pull up in your city trying to get that dead face. Do it on my own, I don't need no dead weight. Had to kill him off, yeah, I need a head space. You know this homegrown bitch don't offend me.